Creamy Movie Club, it's me Jenny, and I finally got around to making a video for you, Alan, because it's been a while, so be prepared for this to be a convoluted and messy review because I haven't done any reviews in a while. And this week's pick from Alan, which is the remake month, was Highlander, which I have never seen before, and my quick review for it is it's enjoyable, but I think it will be one of those rare films that's actually more enjoyable on second viewing. This film's main magic and also main problem is the fact that it's so double storylined, because you're jumping through time and you're jumping through really different film genres, because it's kind of a swords and sorcery sort of style plotline at one end and an 80s action film at the other. And combining those two is both genius and bemusing, and it's fantastic to watch because it's really weird entertainment, because it does work but it feels very disconnected at the same time, and it kind of follows that through in pretty much every aspect of this film. You'll have moments of absolutely really epic fight sequences where that punch lands and you're like, damn, that's awesome, that swordplay is really cool and they've really pulled off that shot, followed by unnecessary backflips, which is a trope of particularly 80s but just generally action films that I find annoying, where they're like unnecessary movement in order to get from point A to point B, like a backflipping off something in order to get 3 foot down instead of just jumping. So it's got things like that where the fight sequences are either really perfect or really bad. Similarly, they have moments where you have extraordinary production value, like the first sequence in the wrestling match where they have such a huge number of extras. I don't know whether or not they maybe jumped in on an actual wrestling event, or whether or not they managed to hire that many extras, but that was extraordinary, like the huge crane shot over this enormous audience. You can't get that nowadays. You do crowd replication instead of getting that number of extras in, and that was amazing. Similarly, the last sequence on the roof is extraordinary because it's all real things. You know, it really is that water tipping over, and the fact that the actors all did that in that environment is amazing, followed by things like strobe lighting and a painted backdrop on what is very clearly a set in order to simulate the castle collapsing. And it has these very, very extreme differences. It has some absolutely gorgeous shots of the environment, particularly in Scotland, followed by moments where you're like, oh, this is a really cool fight sequence, but I can really, really tell that it's two stunt doubles doing stage fighting. And it has just such a weird like beats between these two things where you're like, this is really awesome, this is really cheesy and campy and dated, and yet they're all in the same film. The plotline itself is relatively intelligent and complicated, but it's handled in such a way that it feels very simplistic at the same time. A lot of the character traits in this get lost in the fact that the acting is not, for the most part, particularly brilliant. The scene, for example, between the little girl who becomes a secretary in the Nazi Germany scene, I think that might have been an extra scene for British release. I don't know whether or not every version has got that scene in it. I read something on Wikipedia that it wasn't part of every version. It's some of the worst child acting I've ever seen, and watching that as an adult, it just kind of seems slightly on the creepy side. I can't tell whether or not it's poor acting or poor script choices. Similarly, the accents throughout this are just confusing. When you've got Sean Connery playing an Italian Egyptian, as well as all of these Scottish accents that are interesting. You know, I can't really say much in terms of Scottish accents because I am not good at them, but I definitely found myself kind of double guessing quite a lot of the accent choices of a lot of the characters. The villain in this is really interesting because he's psychotic and weird and rapey and so intensely over the top that you don't really know how to react to him on screen, and he really does. He kind of, in many ways, manages to capture both the aspect of the 80s over-the-top gothy villain and this really fantastical swords and sorcery epic Dark Knight, and it's very confusing, and he's weird and creepy, and they really take the villain role and amp it up to an entire level. He's like your classic villain on steroids with pretty much every aspect except evil genius thrown in. The females in this, I have mixed feelings about. I actually started, when it got to the point where the castle was being broken into and she was told to run, I actually looked at the timestamp and timed how long it took her to not run away. And it was 5 minutes. There was 5 minutes of battle time when she was basically being ignored other than screaming a lot. When she could have legged it for the door and she didn't. And there was just a lot of female characters that I'm like, yeah, this is, I suppose, this sword and sorcery, and it's a, you know, rescue the damsel sort of thing. The fact that they do have multiple females is appreciated and that sort of thing, but I feel sad that there's no female Highlanders. Why do we not have any female immortals? I know they have to kill each other, but would it be nice to have some girls who are actually the ones who are invested in the mystical through line rather than just being the ones on the side? And it really does. All of these male characters have had multiple women during their time, which is reasonable. If you're living 2,000 years, it's likely that you're going to have more than one intimate partner. But it just felt a little bit like the women are the attachments on the male characters rather than being characters in their own right. Maybe more to an extent than others. But yeah, overall I found it enjoyable. I definitely want to rewatch this with a couple other people who have already watched it, because I definitely feel like once you have got over the mind confusion of this film, you definitely get more into the fun and the ridiculousness. From an editing standpoint, I just have to give a shout out to the fact that sometimes the transitions are quite smooth, like the water tank transition was relatively smooth. It was pretty obvious to one viewer, but it was relatively smooth. The shatter screen transition was possibly one of the worst transitions I've seen since Windows Movie Maker was the thing. But it definitely was entertaining. Some pacing issues, some acting issues, definitely some accent issues, but costume-wise and production values, even though they go for very, very different looks from very beautiful scenery, very clearly stage performance type acting on a stage performance type set, to very gritty, realistic environments in the modern world. They definitely have this very epic feeling throughout. So I would recommend it if you haven't seen it, and definitely watch it before you watch the remake, which hasn't even been made yet. But definitely, I'd say watch this first. I can see what's inspired sequels and films, and really get your head around this universe before you watch the remake, because I don't think they'll be able to capture the cheesy, weird, classic 80s-ness of this film in a modern adaptation. And that's about it. I've rambled on for too long. I'm going to get this uploaded, so it's up a bit late, and hopefully you can get it in on time. I'm sorry if I am really, really late. And I will see you guys all very, very soon. I will be doing a mass upload. Probably, I'll maybe film tonight and upload tomorrow, or film and upload tomorrow, and it might be low definition so I can get them all up quickly, because I'm so freaking behind, and I'm sorry everyone. I'll get there eventually, you know I will, because I always do. Anyway, stop talking, comment down below, all of those things. Bye guys.